Good day, I hope you are well. Today I want to read you a passage from the tale of Beowulf. The story is one of the cornerstone tales in English literature, and this will not be the last time that we visit it. To start us off, I will say this. The heroic cycle is a deeply ingrained instinct. Joseph Campbell talks about this in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. The young man sets off to face the chaos of the unknown. He does battle with a great demon and then returns with riches for the whole community. For his triumph, he is rewarded with leadership and takes on great responsibility for his people. The story of Beowulf is likely grounded within this human instinct. The Angles and the Saxons for many centuries dominated Britain before the death of their last king in Harold Godwinson. Their martial culture carried on long after the usurpation by the Normans, some going on to serve in the Varangian Guard. In the tale, Beowulf does battle against three enemies: the demonic man Grendel, Grendel's mother, and late in his years he faces the dragon. You can see the Christian influence on the tale. There is ongoing debate regarding the sequence of syncretization, whether converted pagans Christianized the story, or Christians converted a pagan tale, or some other now unknowable series of events. Regardless, in the end, Beowulf is failed by almost all of his warriors as he does battle with the dragon. This elicits the image of Christ and his disciples. Only Beowulf, potentially representing the Apostle John, who followed Christ through his crucifixion, returns to help defend his Lord, witnessing his death. I will be reading from the version translated by Burton Raffel, published in 1963. There are other versions I enjoy, such as the Seamus Heaney or the J.R.R. Tolkien publications. However, I find the Raffel version to feel very musical in its text, not jarring for modern readers, while still attempting to remain faithful to the Old English poetry. We will be reading what Raffel delineated as chapters 35 through 38, the battle with the dragon and the death of Beowulf, king of the Geats. And then, crying his sorrow, he crawls to his bed. The world and his home hurt him with their emptiness, and so it seemed to Raffel when Herbald was dead, and his heart swelled with grief. The murderer lived. He felt no love for him now, but nothing could help. Word nor hand nor sharp-honed blade, war nor hate, battle or blood or law. The pain could find no relief. He could only live with it, or leave grief and life together. When he'd gone to his grave, Halfdan and Hygelac, his sons, inherited everything. And then there was war between Geats and Swedes. Bitter battles carried across the broad sea when the mighty Hrethel slept, and Odjantho's sons thought Sweden could safely attack, saw no use to pretending friendship, but raided and burned, near old Rensburg slaughtered Geats with their thieving swords. My people repaid them death for death, battle for battle, though one of the brothers bought that revenge with his life. Halfdan, king of the Geats, killed by a Swedish sword, but when dawn came, the slayer was slain. Hygelac's soldiers avenged everything with the edge of their blades. Efor caught the Swedish king, cracked his helmet, split his skull, dropped him, pale and bleeding, to the ground, then put him to death with a swift stroke, shouting his joy. The gifts that Hygelac gave me in the land I earned with my sword, as fate allowed. He never needed Danes or Goths or Swedes, soldiers and allies bought with gold, bribes to his side. My sword was better, and always his. In every battle my place was in front, alone, and so it shall be forever. As long as this sword lasts, serves me in the future as it has served me before. So I killed Dagref the Frank, who bought death to Hygelac, and who looted his corpse. Hyg's necklace, Wealhtheow's treasure, never came to Dagref's king. The thief fell in battle, but not on my blade. He was brave and strong, but I swept him in my arms, ground him against me till his bones broke, till his blood burst out. And now I shall fight for this treasure, fight with both hand and sword. And Beowulf uttered his final boast. I've never known fear. As a youth, I fought in endless battles. I am old now, but I will fight again, seek fame still, if the dragon hiding in this tower dares to face me. Then he said farewell to his followers, each in his turn for the last time. I'd use no sword, no weapon if this beast could be killed without it, crushed to death like Grendel, gripped in my hands and torn limb from limb. But his breath will be burning hot, poison will pour from his tongue. I feel no shame with this shield and sword and armor against this monster. When he comes to me, I mean to stand, not run from his shooting flames. Stand till fate decides which of us wins. My heart is firm, my hands calm. I need no hot words. Wait for me close by, my friends. We shall see soon who will survive this bloody battle. Stand when the fighting is done. No one else could do what I mean to. Here, no man but me could hope to defeat this monster. No one could try. And this dragon's treasure, his gold, and everything hidden in that tower will be mine, or war will sweep me to a bitter death. Then Beowulf rose, still brave, still strong, and with his shield at his side and a mail shirt on his breast, strode calmly, confidently toward the tower under the rocky cliffs. No coward could have walked there. And then he who'd endured dozens of desperate battles, who'd stood boldly while swords and shields clashed, the best of kings, saw huge stone arches and felt the heat of the dragon's breath flooding down through the hidden entrance, too hot for anyone to stand. A streaming current of fire and smoke that blocked all passage, and the Geat's lord and leader, angry, lowered his sword and roared out a battle cry, a call so loud and clear that it reached through the hoary rock, hung in the dragon's ear. The beast rose, angry, knowing a man had come, and then nothing but war could have followed. Its breath came first, a steaming cloud pouring from the stone. Then the earth itself shook. Beowulf swung his shield into place, held it in front of him, facing the entrance. The dragon coiled and uncoiled, its heart urging it into battle. Beowulf's ancient sword was waiting, unsheathed, his sharp and gleaming blade. The beast came closer. Both of them were ready, each set on slaughter. The Geat's great prince stood firm, unmoving, prepared behind his high shield, waiting in his shining armor. The monster came quickly toward him, pouring out fire and smoke, hurrying to its fate. Flaming beat at the iron shield, and for a time it held, protected Beowulf as he'd planned. Then it began to melt. And for the first time in his life, that famous prince fought with fate against him, with glory denied him. He knew it, but he raised his sword and struck at the dragon's scaly hide. The ancient blade broke and bit into the monster's skin, drew blood but cracked and failed him before it went deep enough, helped him. Less than he needed, the dragon leaped with pain, thrashed and beat at him, spouting murderous flames, spreading them everywhere. And the Geat's ring giver did not boast of glorious victories in other wars. His weapon had failed him, deserted him, now when he needed it most. That excellent sword. Ecgtheow's famous son stared at death, unwilling to leave this world, to exchange it for a dwelling in some distant place, a journey into darkness that all men must take, as death ends their few brief hours on earth. Quickly, the dragon came at him. Encouraged as Beowulf fell back, its breath flared, and he suffered, wrapped around in swirling flames, a king before, but now a beaten warrior. None of his comrades came to him, helped him. His brave and noble followers, they ran for their lives, fled deep in a wood, and only one of them remained, stood there, miserable, remembering, as a good man must, what kinship should mean. His name was Beowulf. He was Wexton's son and a good soldier. His family had been Swedish once. Watching Beowulf, he could see how his king was suffering, burning, remembering everything his lord and cousin had given him, armor and gold and the great estates Wexton's family enjoyed. Beowulf's mind was made up. He raised his yellow shield and drew his sword, an ancient weapon that had once belonged to Onella's nephew and that Wexton had won, killing the prince when he fled from Sweden, sought safety with Herdred, and found death. And Beowulf's father had carried the dead man's armor and his sword to Onella, and the king had said nothing, only given him armor and sword and all. Everything his rebel nephew had owned and lost when he left this life, and Wexton had kept those shining gifts, held them for years, waiting for his son to use them, wear them as honorably and well as once his father had done. Then Wexton died, and Beowulf, with his heir, inherited treasures and weapons and land. He'd never worn that armor, fought with that sword, until Beowulf called him to his side, led him into war. But his soul did not melt, his sword was strong. The dragon discovered his courage and his weapon, when the rush of battle brought them together. And Beowulf, his heart heavy, uttered the kind of words his comrades deserved. I remember how we sat in the mead hall drinking and boasting of how brave we'd be when Beowulf needed us, he who gave us these swords and armor. All of us swore to repay him when the time came, kindness for kindness, with our lives if he needed them. He allowed us to join him, chose us from all his great army, thinking our boasting words had some weight, believing our promises, trusting our swords. He took us for soldiers, for men. He meant to kill this monster himself, our mighty king, fight this battle alone and unaided, as in the days when his strength and daring dazzled men's eyes. But those days are over and gone, and now our Lord must lean on younger arms, and we must go to him, while angry flames burn at his flesh. Help our glorious king. By Almighty God, I'd rather burn myself than see flames swirling around my Lord. And who are we to carry home our shields before we've slain his enemy and ours, to run back to our homes with Beowulf so hard pressed here? I swear that nothing he ever did deserved an end like this, dying miserably and alone, butchered by this savage beast. We swore that these swords and armor were each for us all. Then he ran to his king, crying encouragement as he dove through the dragon's deadly fumes. Beloved Beowulf, remember how you boasted once that nothing in the world would ever destroy your fame. Fight to keep it. Now be strong and brave, my noble king, protecting life and fame together. My sword will fight at your side. The dragon heard him, the man-hating monster, and was angry. Shining with surging flames, it came for him, anxious to return his visit. Waves of fire swept at his shield, and the edge began to burn. His mail shirt could not help him, but before his hands dropped the blazing wood, Beowulf jumped behind Beowulf's shield. His own was burnt to ashes. Then the famous old hero, remembering days of glory, lifted what was left of Nagling, his ancient sword, and swung it with all his strength, smashed the great blade into the beast's head. But then Nagling broke to pieces, as iron always had in Beowulf's hands. His arms were too strong. The hardest blade could not help him, the most wonderfully worked. He carried them to war, but fate had decreed that the Geats' great king would be no better for any weapon. Then the monster charged again, vomiting fire, wild with pain, rushed out, fierce and dreadful, its fear forgotten. Watching for its chance, it drove its tusk at Beowulf's neck. He staggered, the blood came flooding forth, fell like rain. And then, when Beowulf needed him most, Beowulf showed his courage, his strength and skill, and the boldness he was born with. Ignoring the dragon's head, he helped his lord by striking lower down. The sword sank in, his hand was burned, but the shining blade had done its work. The dragon's belching flames began to flicker and die away. And Beowulf drew his battle-sharp dagger. The blood-stained old king still knew what he was doing. Quickly, he cut the beast in half, slid it apart. It fell, their courage had killed it. Two noble cousins had joined in the dragon's death. Yet, what they did, all men must do when the time comes. But the triumph was the last Beowulf would ever earn, the end of greatness and life together. The wound in his neck began to swell and grow. He could feel something stirring, burning in his veins, a stinging venom, and knew the beast's fangs had left it. He fumbled along the wall, found a slab of stone, and dropped down. Above him he saw huge stone arches and heavy posts, holding up the roof of the giant hall. Then Beowulf's gentle hands bathed the blood-stained prince, his glorious lord, weary of war, and loosened his helmet. Beowulf spoke in spite of the swollen, livid wound, knowing he'd unwound his string of days on earth, seen as much as God would grant him. All worldly pleasure was gone, as life would go soon. I'd leave my armor to my son now, if God had given me an heir, a child born of my body, his life created for mine. I've worn this crown for 50 winters. No neighboring people have tried to threaten the Geats, sent soldiers against us, or talked of terror. My days have gone by as fate willed, waiting for its word to be spoken, ruling as well as I knew how, swearing no unholy oaths, seeking no lying wars. I can leave this life happy, I can die here, knowing the Lord of all life has never watched me wash my sword in blood born of my own family. Beloved Beowulf, go quickly, find the dragon's treasure. We've taken its life, but its gold is ours too. Hurry, bring me ancient silver, precious jewels, shining armor and gems before I die. Death will be softer, leaving life in this people I've ruled so long, if I look at this last of all prizes. Then Wexton's son went in as quickly as he could, did as the dying Beowulf asked, entered the inner darkness of the tower, went with his mail shirt and his sword. Flushed with victory, he groped his way, a brave young warrior, and suddenly saw piles of gleaming gold, precious gems scattered on the floor, cups and bracelets, rusty old helmets, beautifully made but rotting with no hands to rub and polish them. They lay where the dragon left them. It had flown into the darkness once before fighting its final battle, so gold can easily triumph, defeat the strongest men, no matter how deep it is hidden. And he saw, hanging high above, a golden banner, woven by the best of weavers and beautiful, and over everything he saw strange light shining everywhere, on walls and floor and treasure. Nothing moved, no other monsters appeared. He took what he wanted, all the treasures that pleased his eye, heavy plates and golden cups and the glorious banner, loaded his arms with all they could hold. Beowulf's dagger, his iron blade, had finished the fire-spitting terror that once protected tower and treasures alike. The grey-bearded lord of the Geats had ended those flying, burning raids forever. Then Beowulf went back, anxious to return while Beowulf was alive, to bring him treasure they'd won together. He ran, hoping his wounded king, weak and dying, had not left the world too soon. Then he brought their treasure to Beowulf and found his famous king bloody, gasping for breath. But Beowulf sprinkled water over his lord, until the words deep in his breast broke through and were heard. Beholding the treasure, he spoke haltingly, "For this gold, these jewels, I thank our Father in heaven, ruler of the earth, for all of this that his grace has given me, allowed me to bring to my people while breath still came to my lips. I sold my life for this treasure, and I sold it well. Take what I leave, Beowulf. Lead my people, help them, my time is gone. Have the brave Geats build me a tomb. When the funeral flames have burned me, and build it here at the water's edge, high on the spit of land, so sailors can see this tower and remember my name, and call it Beowulf's Tower, and boats in the darkness and mist crossing the sea will know it." Then that brave king gave the golden necklace from around his throat to Beowulf, gave him the gold-covered helmet and his rings and his mail shirt, and ordered him to use them well. "You're the last of all our far-flung family. Fate has swept our race away, taken warriors in their strength and led them to the death that was waiting. And now I follow them." The old man's mouth was silent, spoke no more, and said as much as it could. He would sleep in the fire soon. His soul left his flesh, flew to glory.